Hi, this is the explanation for the lesson plan portion of the unit project assignment. The lesson plan requires 2 drafts and a final submission. The first draft is due on November 7th, and the second draft is due on November 21st. Each draft is worth 10 points. You will receive 10 points as long as you submit a completely filled out typed draft. The final is due on December 3rd, and the final lesson plan is worth 80 points. So this assignment in all is worth 100 points. This is part of step 3, the last piece. You've done the web, you've done the unit schedule, the interest center, and the family newsletter. The last piece in step 3 is creating a lesson plan for an activity that you would teach in a classroom during one time period in the day. The purpose of the lesson is to plan an arts-based lesson from your unit. Remember your unit web and select one of the 4 activities you put on the web under Development through the Expressive Arts. You will use the template to create a lesson which includes a header, objectives, an assessment plan, procedures, the context, which means how is your lesson developmentally appropriate, and the connections. How does this lesson connect to other activities in the unit? You'll also describe the materials, the learning standards, you need 2 here, and the last category is accommodations. I'm going to go over the rubric so you'll know exactly how you earn points and what's included in each section. The first way to earn points is to submit drafts. Make sure you submit a typed copy with all of the elements of the assignment attempted on or before November 7th and on or before November 21st. It's important that you make these due dates, as I need to get you feedback almost immediately. The next section in the grading rubric is heading. You'll receive a possible 5 points for completing the heading. The required elements in the heading are the name of the lesson, your name, the age range and approximate number of children that would be included in this lesson, the date or general time frame the activity or materials would be introduced and taught, such as this is something in September likely to happen, or is it something likely to happen in January or more likely to happen in the spring. Those are things that you could put. I know that you're not teaching it now. You want to talk about the part of the program, meaning is it a circle time? Is it a teacher-led small group activity? Is it going to happen in the art or dramatic play center? Or is it an outdoor activity? And if you used a source for the lesson, make sure that you give it credit here. Here's an example of a header. The name of the lesson is flower charades. The next line would be your name. The lesson is designed for preschool children ages 3 to 4 years. The student would likely teach it in the spring. It makes sense in New England to do a flower unit in the spring. It would be part of circle time, and the student listed the source where she received inspiration for the activity. The next section of the rubric is objective. You probably remember this from the unit planning chart. The target is to describe what you want children to know and be able to do. You use the wording "the children will," and you make sure that the objective is measurable. Here are 3 samples. Notice the verbs come directly from the chart in your unit planning packet that I gave you at the beginning of the semester. The next area on the rubric is assessment. Again, it's very similar to what I had you do on the unit planning chart. You're going to talk about what you would collect as evidence and how you would evaluate or grade the information that you receive. Remember, we collect, we analyze, and we evaluate. It's a 3-step process. Here's an example. The student wrote this objective. Children will compare and imitate movement characteristics of 4 farm animals they observed. The student will assess this by formulating a checklist of the movement I want to see the children recreate. Ideally, I'd like to see 100% completion. This is the checklist the student submitted. If you are going to use a checklist, you must submit it with the lesson. She's listed the children's names and the movement characteristics that she would likely observe. She is considering if they can do 4, that it's successful. And it'll be interesting to see how many the children do. The next area on the rubric is procedure. This area sometimes is a bit more difficult for students to complete. Have the frame of reference that I'm a substitute in your classroom, and I would really need to read a script to be able to teach the lesson as you've planned it. I should understand the introduction and body of the lesson. I should know what to explain or to model. I should know vocabulary and understand what assistance I may need to provide. The procedure should have some flexibility for the activity to be extended or shortened. For example, I will read the example to you since it may be difficult for you to read. The student wrote, "I will begin the large group activity by saying we went to the farm a few days ago and we saw many animals. Do you remember? What do cows eat? Show me how cows eat. What are some of the foods horses enjoy? What do chickens eat? What do pigs eat? What do rabbits eat? What kind of noises do the animals make? Show me pigs, horses, ducks, cats, dogs, chickens, and roosters." Now, what did the horses look like when they galloped? At this point, I may demonstrate the action with the children. I would then ask the children to show me cows chewing hay, horses neighing, whinnying, trotting, galloping, chickens clucking and laying eggs, pigs oinking and playing in mud, ducks quacking, waddling, swimming, and cats meowing and dogs barking. Well, the children are sitting down. After we've discovered the movements, I will have the children sit down. I'll ask them if they've ever played mother hen or follow the leader. I'll call on the child who raises their hand and ask them to explain the game. If they'll need help, I'll explain that when the mother hen or leader moves, the chicks need to follow and imitate the movement. I'll show a photo of the animal and look for the children to imitate movements of the animal. This is when the student would complete the checklist. What I liked about this procedure is that it included guiding questions, so the children are not solely listening objects but actively involved. I understand the vocabulary, which was many verbs. I wonder how the understanding of verb vocabulary benefits children. And I assume that I can be flexible with how long it takes for children to act out the different farm animals. The next section is alignment. You probably remember this again from the unit planning chart. What I'm looking for is that the objective, the assessment, and the procedure are logically related. This was the graphic that I showed in the unit planning chart. So remember, these three things should have a logical and clear relationship. Here's an example of objectives and an assessment plan from the worm unit. The student is looking for the children to explain how an earthworm is good for the soil, and that the children produce a painting of underground earthworms. The student will assess the children by collecting work samples. She will ask questions and write down responses on a separate piece of paper that will be attached to the bottom of their picture. They will demonstrate comprehension of what a worm tunnel resembles by telling me they have created oval, curvy, straight, horizontal, and vertical lines in their painting. If the child can name 3 different shapes that form their worm tunnels, I will conclude the child is developing good beginner's knowledge of shape names. They will demonstrate comprehension of worm habitat by telling how the tunnels are the worm's burrow, and they'll tell that the soil is enriched when the worm leaves castings in the soil, and castings are the food the worm does not need, and it passes from their body to the soil. This is the procedure. I'm just going to summarize quickly that she's going to read a book. She lists the specific title and author of the book, which you would need to do as well. She's going to have the children discuss the book. She's listed her guiding questions. She will have the Tier 2 vocabulary words. A lot of those words were the ones that I just read in the assessment, as well as she's done a very nice job of listing the vocab here so I know what words she's teaching. Then they're going to go to the art center and do the actual painting, and then she will ask the question. So, do you think that the objective, assessment, and procedure are related? The next area on the rubric is interactivity, where I'm looking for how your lesson makes the most of child choice, motivation, independence, self-expression, and personal responsibility within the activity. How were the children interactive during the worm lesson? How did the student make the most of child choice, motivation, independence, self-expression, and personal responsibility within the activity? The next area on the rubric is accommodations. The accommodations explain the adaptations you will make for some children so they can succeed with limited assistance. I will know how to make the activity or lesson easier, and I'll also know how to make it more challenging. For example, this is from the farm lesson where the children are imitating movements. The student would add action pictures for dual language learners, and you can see those pictures. You would want to include that if that's an accommodation you decide to make. You would want to include those graphics in the lesson plan as well as list them on the materials list. And to challenge some children, she would add new movements such as skipping and galloping for children who need challenges. Ask the children if they can think of movements they would like to show the group. Would be another way to make accommodations. The example shows the materials used that support making learning easier, especially for dual language learners. I'm a bit unclear on specifically how the accommodations challenge some students. This student had written, to make the activity easier, I would have the book Worm Wigglers, Earthworms in Your Backyard on display for the children to refer to during and after the art project and use the pictures below to explain the vocabulary. To make the activity more challenging, she was providing nonfiction literature on different types of worms for students to recognize similarities and differences between invertebrates. But this student did receive a 10 on the lesson. And here are those challenges. The next area is materials. I'm looking here for a list of materials which includes the supplies children would need to complete the lesson or activity, any books used, which include the title and the author, not just a general, I will read a book about the beach, but it needs to be a specific title and author, and any supplies that you would need for accommodations and assessment, such as a digital camera to take pictures of the children, or note paper and pen to write down quotes, whatever it may be, or the checklist that you've designed. Here's an incomplete material list. Why do you suppose it's incomplete? What items are missing? It says large white construction paper, tempera paints in varying colors, rubber fishing worms, enough fishing worms for children to have 2, and the book Wiggle and Waggle by Carolyn Arnold. This is the student that had the accommodations where she was doing the picture list and nonfiction books about worms. I don't see any of the nonfiction books listed, and if you don't attach the pictures and the graphics to your lesson plan, it's considered incomplete. How am I going to determine if the lesson is developmentally appropriate? Is the lesson concrete, real, and relevant? If I can say yes, then likely it's developmentally appropriate. I will consider how long children are listening objects and how long they are actively engaged. Please let me know if you have any questions. Happy planning!